Welcome, Beau. Thank you for accepting joining us in this short interview. We're very much excited to hear about your research on how to estimate the size of drug markets. So in this regard, I would like to tell us, how do you estimate the size of drug markets?
Well, stepping back, there are a number of reasons why you would want to estimate the size of a drug market. Just in order to get a sense of scale, for example, if there's a 1 metric ton seizure, you'd like to be able to know, well, what share of the market could that actually account for? It's also important to have a level of precision in terms of the size of the market. So then you can begin to understand over time, is it growing or is it getting smaller in responses to different policies? And especially in the United States with a lot of the policy changes we're seeing, it's important to know what the size of the market is in terms of making projections about the changes in policies. Now, there are a number of different ways that you could estimate the size of a drug market. In general, you can think about them in kind of 2 categories. One being on the supply side, maybe based on information that you get from seizures, and then you've got the demand side, which would largely be based on information from general population surveys combined with a lot of additional data. Now, most of the work that I've been doing on estimating the size of drug markets, either for different states or for the entire country of the United States, has been focused on the demand side.
Okay, so there's a lot of complexities to measure demand because it entails having people that maybe are not willing to answer questions about this and how do they go about their consumption habits. So what can you tell us about this? How do you approach this population and how do you ensure that their answers are accurate or representative, for example?
So to give you an example, after Washington State legalized cannabis in 2012, the state then had to figure out, well, how much cannabis is actually consumed in the state so they can make decisions about the number of stores to allow, also make more accurate projections about tax revenues. So at RAND, I led the team to help them figure this out. And so it was a demand side approach. And so we began by using data from the general population survey, which was, we were able to get information on the number of individuals in Washington State who reported using cannabis in the past month. Now, we know that not everyone is honest about their answers, and what we were able to do in the United States, this was some time ago, but they attempted to validate the general population survey. So after having individuals kind of answer the survey, they then asked them to submit to a drug test. So, it wouldn't be used for law enforcement purposes, but the idea is then you look at the results of the drug test to see if they were honest in the survey. So we got the general population survey, and then we were able to, bring in, the other evidence about what share of people aren't being honest. And then we were also able to look at the number of days individuals were using. So kind of from that, we were able to estimate the total number of use days in the state of Washington. But what we didn't have was information about how much people were consuming for each, per use day. And a lot of general population surveys don't ask about that. So what my team did is we actually developed a web survey. And the idea was to essentially get a convenient sample of a couple thousand heavy cannabis users. Because it turns out that we know that it's about 20% of cannabis users account for 80% of the market. So these are your daily to near daily users. So we thought, look, if we could get information from a couple thousand daily or near daily cannabis users, it would give us a decent range about, that we could insert into the models. We knew it wasn't going to be representative, but we just wanted that range. And so what we did on this survey is, we asked a number of questions, not just about how much they were consuming, but also on expenditures. But we asked the questions about consumption in a few different ways. We had a question that said, on a typical day, how much do you consume on a light day or a heavy day? But then we also had other questions where we had pictures. And so it would be a picture of kind of an unrolled joint and an uncrushed bud next to a coin and a credit card and a ruler, and it would show a picture and say, hey, this is 1 gram of cannabis. On a typical day, do you use about this amount, twice this amount, half this amount? And And then, but also we would randomly assign the amount of cannabis in the picture, so we could make sure we weren't getting kind of any anchoring effects. And so we were able to do that, and it gave us the range that we needed. And it was really interesting. So we fielded the survey, I forget on what day, but within a couple of days, we already had a few thousand responses.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it is mostly just all spread through social media.
Excellent.
We didn't pay individuals to do this. But that said, when you're doing these types of web surveys, you've got to be careful. I mean, first of all, what you're not necessarily getting information from a representative population. I mean, of course, that's what we weren't really targeting that. But you also have to worry about people sometimes filling out the survey multiple times. You also have to worry about people just kind of giving unrealistic responses. You have to deal with that with all surveys. So some recommendations for those who are kind of thinking about doing this. One would be you want to pay more attention to those who actually complete the survey, as opposed to someone that just goes in and maybe only fills out a couple of questions. I mean, there's information there, but one of the things you want to do is look at those who complete it. You also want to pay attention to how much time people take. So that's one thing you can do with a web survey, is you can assess, okay, it took them 10 minutes or it took them 15 minutes. You can't really do that with a mail survey. And what's nice about that is, because if someone could complete the survey, but if they just click and, if they're being unrealistic, they could do it in 3 minutes. Yeah. Well, knowing that the survey should take 10 minutes, I can just eliminate all responses that only took 3 minutes. And then you could also do outlier analysis as well. We knew that there were some people that might be trying, giving unrealistic answers. So, it's not a perfect data source, but for our purposes, it was quite useful in helping us get a better understanding of of how much people were consuming. And it turns out about a year later, so we were focused on Washington State, another team did something similar to this for the state of Colorado, which also legalized. And we ended up getting about the same results, in that your daily to near daily users were using about 1.6 grams per use day.
Okay.
But that was 2013, and so we're actually next week we're going to refield the survey to see if things have changed for the heavy users.
Okay, very interesting.
Yeah.
And just one final question. You mentioned these web-based interviews to measure consumption and habit. But do you have any other data besides consumption and seizures, like to estimate the size of the market?
Yeah. So on the demand side, you can begin with the general population surveys, and then you can. Like as I said, we had you use the web server to get information about consumption. We also had information about expenditures. There's also some exciting research that's being done on wastewater testing.
Okay.
And so this is something that the EMC-DDA is really leading. And so the idea being that for certain substances, you can go to the wastewater and do a test, and then look at the metabolite, and then begin to back out how much people were consuming kind of in that jurisdiction. And I kind of think that's going to be the future of kind of assessing the size of markets, especially in places that don't necessarily have general population surveys, or where people, are in a situation where they don't feel comfortable answering. So I'm excited to see this, and you're now starting to see more research, which is comparing the results of wastewater testing with the more traditional estimates. And so, this is very preliminary, but I was just at a conference last week, the International Society for the Study of Drug Policy, and saw someone give a paper, and they were estimating, they were looking at cocaine consumption in parts of Switzerland, comparing the traditional methods versus using wastewater. And at least for that particular study, they found that the results were pretty similar.
Okay, wow.
So so I think depending on the substance you're talking about, and then also depending on the amount of data, I think that's going to shape, or the types of data that are available, that's going to shape which approach you used for estimating the size of various drug markets.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. I really enjoyed this.
Me too.